welcome to this session. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a gRPC server with Go. Let's get started. In order to initialize my project, I'm going to initialize a Go module. To do that, I'm going to open the terminal, and then inside my terminal, I'm going to type go mod init, and then my module path. So github.com/maximilian-demo-grpc. As usual, you will have a go.mod file that will be created. At the top, you will have the module path, so module keyword and then the module path, and then the version of Go that you are using. The first file that I'm going to create is the proto file. What is the proto file? This will be the description of your API, of your interface. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm naming that invoicer.proto. So inside this proto file, I'm going first to define which syntax do I use. So I write syntax and then equal proto3. And why do we need to specify that? That's because when we have a gRPC service, the messages that we will exchange between the server and the client will be encoded using protocol buffers. And this protocol buffers has the versioning system, and we say here explicitly that we are going to use the version 3 of protocol buffers. Then I can define my service. So I'm going to write service, and then I have to put the service name. So it will be invoicer. And then I have a curly bracket. And here inside, I can define my endpoints. I can define my RPC methods. So I start by RPC, and then I put the name, so create. And then I open parentheses, and inside the parentheses, I should put the request. So I will name that create request. And then I put returns, and then I will have to specify my return. So my return will be a create response message. So we have a create request message and a create response message. But those messages, they do not exist for the moment. That's why it's in red. So we have to create them. Let's go. So I create my first message type, create request. And here I will put the fields that I can have in this message. I will also create right away my create response. Then I need to define what is inside my create request, what is inside my input, and what will be inside my output. So let's begin by create request. So first I want to have an int 64 that will be named amount, that will be at the position 1 of my message. So I need an amount for an invoice, but not only an amount, I also need a currency. So I add a currency here. A currency is a string, and it will be in position 2. By the way, you can see that I use amount as integers. That's because I'm using the Fowler pattern, which is to represent an amount of money with an integer, which is expressed in the smallest unit of the currency, and a currency as a string. So I have my amount and currency. Then I can have my create response that will be composed of bytes, and I will want to output, for instance, an invoice as PDF. So I create one field here that is of type bytes. The name is PDF at position 1. And maybe also I want to have the invoice as a doc file, so I can add another field. What I can also do is create other messages. So let's create a message named amount, then I open a curly bracket, and then I can put that here. So I have a message amount, and inside my message create request, I can put another message inside. And let's say that I put a message of type amount, that I name amount, and it will be at the position 1. This is very useful if your messages start to be very large, or if you want to reuse some messages that you have defined elsewhere. So then in my create request, I have also to say from which person is the invoice. So I add a string field from position 2, and I add another field, which is 2 at the position 3. Alright, so we have our service invoicer that takes a create request and returns a create response. There is just one thing missing here, is an option that I put at the top of the file. So you can put several options if you want. What I can do here is add the option go package. And here I have to specify the path of my go package. So I start by the module path, so github.com/maximilian/demo-grpc. By the way, this is the same thing that you should have here. And then I put a slash and the package name. I'm going to name that package invoicer. And then I don't forget the semicolon. So I add this option in order to tell the program that we are going to use in order to create code, where to put that code. Now we have our proto file ready. And in order to make it work, we will need to generate the code for the server and the client. So in order to do that, we will use something called protoc or protoc, and you will need to install it before. So you can go on this page, so grpc.io/docs/protoc installation, and you have instruction for installing that. So if you're using Linux, you're gonna run that, protobuf compiler, or if you're using Mac, you will need to run that command, so brew install protobuf. It's pretty easy to install. You can also choose to install a pre-compiled binary, and then you have the instructions here. I found that I'm using macOS, so this one is really easy to run. So once you have done that, you should have the access in your terminal to protoc. So in order to check that, you're gonna run protoc -- version and then press enter. And you can see here that is installed, and I have the version 3.15.2. So that's cool. Now that we have protoc, we will be able to generate some code based on this proto file. And we will generate the code that will take a message and encode it in the protocol buffers way, and also decode it. And we will also generate the code in order to create our gRPC server. Now I open my terminal and I type protoc and then backslash. I add a backslash in order to go to the next line, in order for you to follow me more closely. You can also write the command in one single line, but it's not very visual. So I'm gonna add a first option, which is --go_out. Here I have to say the package name that I want my code to be generated in. So invoicer. I want that to be generated into the package invoicer. Then I'm going to add a new option. So go_opt and then equal path and then equal source relative. It simply says that the file that will be generated will be in the same relative directory as the input file, and the input file is the proto file. Alright, so I can now add another option. It's go-grpc_out, and I'm going to put invoicer as well. I want my gRPC code to be generated into the package invoicer. And then I add another option. It's go-grpc_opt, and that will be equal to path equal source relative. And then I have to specify my input file, and the input file, it's the invoicer.proto, my proto file. And then I can press enter. We have an error. It says invoicer, no such file or directory. That's because we need to create a new directory here named invoicer. And then I can try to run the command again, and it seems to work. So we have two files that have been created, a file named invoicer.pb.co and a file name invoicer_grpc.pb.co. What we can note here in those files is that it relies on some external code. I have an import statement here, and so it uses the package context. Okay, it's part of the standard library, but those packages are located elsewhere. Here we have the same in the invoicer.pb.co. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do a go get on this package in order to download it and use it in my program. So I open my terminal and then I type go get -u in order to get the latest version of that. So the google.golang.org /gRPC package has been downloaded, and you can see that we have some changes on the Go mode. You can see that we have this, and this that has been added, and you can see that we have also indirect dependencies here. I'm going just to run a go mode tidy. I ran go mode tidy because I've seen that all the dependencies were noted as indirect, and the go mode tidy command will ensure that the go mode file matches the source code in the module. So now you can see that I have those two that are not indirect but direct, and those that are indirect, so it's better. And you can see we have no more red here, so it means that my IDE has found the sources of those code and the go mode is clean. And now we can write our main.go file. So I create a new file in the root directory, and then I name that main.go. So you can see I have the package main and the function main. So this is the entry point of my program. Since I want to build a gRPC server, I have to open a connection in order to receive requests and send responses. In order to do that, I have to call net.listen. So net is a standard package from the standard library, and it will take as first parameter TCP, and then we have to give the address. So we are going just to give the port. So here I say that I want the port 8089. So you can put whatever you want here. And net.listen will return a listener and an error. So we are going to call that listener lis, and then an error. So the first thing that I have to do is I have to check if I have an error. So if error different than nil. So if I have an error, I want to exit my program. So I'm going to call log.fatal. And I'm going to say that cannot create listener. And then I put the error message that I receive. So %s and then error. But here it doesn't work. I want to print something here, so I'm going to use log fatalf. So with log fatalf, %s will be replaced by the text of the error that I got. It's better to debug. Once I've done that, I can call invoicer.register invoicer server. And so that method has been generated by protoc, and so it takes as first argument a service registrar, a gRPC service registrar, and our server. And if I look at what is that, it's a type that is part of this package that we have imported before. So in order to create my gRPC service registrar, I'm going to use a method from the gRPC package, so grpc.new server. So this will be my server registrar. And so I can use that as the first argument. And as the second argument, I have to give an invoicer server. Let's take a look at this type. And you can see that this type is an interface. And so you have one method on that interface, which is create, that takes first argument a context, then a create request and a create response. And then we have this. Sounds familiar, no? So it's our create, request, and response that we have defined in our proto file. So what we have to do is we have to create a type that implements this interface, invoicer server. Alright, so let's do that. I'm going to split the view here in order to have my interface displayed. So I come back to my main.go. And now my task is to implement an interface. So what does it mean to implement an interface? It means to create a new type that has the methods that are defined in this interface. So let's do that. I create a new type. So let's call it my invoicer server. I base that on a struct. I could also put another type if I want. And then I have to define some methods, and the methods that I have to define is this one, so create. So I'm gonna add a new method here, and so my type will be my invoicer server. The receiver name, let's call that S, because it's a server, like a server. So the name of my method should be create, and it should take a context and a create request. So what I'm going to do is I'm going just to copy that and replace that here. So I have to import some stuff here. So I'm going to import the context package from the standard library. And then this type create request is part of the invoicer package. So I put invoicer.createRequest. I'm going to do the same for the create response. So now we have this method create here. Let's return something dummy. So we can return nil and nil, but we will return a new element of type pointer to invoicer.createResponse, and then we can fill the fields. So for instance, the field PDF is of type slash of bytes. So I'm going to create a slice of byte here. I can do the same for the docx. The type myInvoicerServer does not fully implement this interface here. You have something a bit weird here, is that you have a type InvoicerServer, you have a first method create, we implemented it, and then another method must embed an implemented InvoicerServer. So it's here to signal you that all the implementations of this invoicer server must embed an implemented invoicer server for forward compatibility. So we're going to do that. We're going to embed that type here. So to do that, I'm going to just embed the type unimplemented invoicer server like that. And you can see here that my IDE has automatically detected that this type implements this interface. I can create now a new variable service that will be of type pointer to my invoicer server. And I will put that service variable as second argument of the register invoicer server. That's because invoicer server is a type interface, and the an element of type pointer to my invoicer server implements this interface. My service is now registered. I have now to launch my server. So I will use a method that is defined an element of type pointer to gRPC.server, and this method is called serve. And you can see that serve takes an input, and this is a net.listener that we have created just here. So I will put that just here. And by the way, you can see that it can return an error. So I have to handle that error. Again, it's the same pattern. If the error is different than nil, then I can use log that fatalf, and I will say impossible to serve. And then I will print the error message. So %s, and then second argument, the error. All right, so we are ready to launch the server. So I go into my terminal, and then I can run main.go. I can also click here just to run it locally. Let's try with the terminal. So go run main.go. If you use macOS, you will see this alert. So do you want the application main to accept incoming network connections? that's normal. We are opening a network connection. So you have to click allow in order to allow that. And then your server is launched. You might ask me how to test that. So in order to test the server, you should be able to create a message, encode it with protocol buffers, and then send it to the server. It's not that easy to encode a message into the protocol buffer format. And in order to do that, you will need to use a tool in order to test your gRPC server. So what I use is BloomRPC in order to send my request to gRPC server. When you have installed BloomRPC and you open the application, you will have this window. The first thing that we are going to do is to load the protocol buffer file, because BloomRPC will need that file in order to encode messages into the protocol buffer format. So I'm going to click on Import Protos, and then I select my protocol buffer file. So BloomRPC will parse that, and you will see that you have your method here. And it will generate for you an example of request that is in JSON format, and then you will be able to launch your request. So you have to make sure that you have localhost 8089 or whatever you put as a port, and then you can send a request by clicking the play button. And you can see here that we have a response from the server. So I can try to run as many requests as I want. I will have the same answer because for the moment it's static. All right, so our server is working. And what I do generally when I work with gRPC project is that I create a makefile at the root of the project. And in this makefile, I will put the command in order to generate the code. So in a makefile, what you do is that you write the receipt name, so it's also called the target name, and I'm calling that, for instance, generate gRPC code. Then a colon, and then I'm going to put my protoc command. I put the command just here, so I've copied that. So it's protoc -- go out, etc., etc. And then inside my terminal, what I can do is I can run that command in order to regenerate my code. So let's say I do modification in my proto file, I have to regenerate my code. So make generate gRPC _ code. Now let's say that I want to add another field to my create request, a field of type string, for instance, like VAT number, which will be at index 4. Then I can open my terminal and run the command. Then if we take a look at the create request type, you will see that you have another field, VAT number of type string. And by the way, in our main.go file, we have this method that takes a context.context and an invoicer.createRequest, but we didn't define name for input variable, so we can do that now. So ctx for context, and then rec for the request. And then I have access to the context and the request. So what I can put here, instead of test, I can put what I have in from, for instance. Then we can run our server again. So go run main.go, and we will test that with BloomRPC. So I allow the connection. Then I can launch BloomRPC. Let's launch one new request. And you can note that each of those numbers represent the ASCII value of hello. The letter, let's take a look at the ASCII table. If I take the letter H, it's 72, and here I have 72. Then I take the letter E, not capitalized, and you can have E capitalized, which is 69, or the E that is not capitalized, that is 101, and you can see that we have 101 here, etc., etc. What you can do next is to really implement that create method. So generating an invoice and returning the PDF bytes for the invoice. You can also do the following, is to add a new method here, for instance, update, if you want to update an invoice. I don't know if in accounting way it's something doable, but We never know. We can also have a delete request, so you will just have to add another line, then change the name, etc., etc. This is the end of this session. So what do you need to remember? The first step when you want to create a gRPC server is to create a file.proto. That would be the definition of your interface, the definition of your API. You will define messages, you will define a service with RPC methods. This is the end of this session, so what do you need to remember? The first step when you want to create a gRPC server is to create a file.proto. You will define messages, define a service, and inside a service you can have RPC methods. Then you will need to generate the Go code that will be used, and you will use protoc to do that. The code that will be generated will help you to encode and decode messages with the protocol buffers format, to handle also incoming gRPC requests and to answer those requests. Then you have to remember that each time you change your proto file, then you need to regenerate the code. Then another advice, do not touch the generated code. Your changes will be removed at the next generation. That's it. Thanks for watching. So you can read my book on practicalgolessons.com, and I also have a Go course of 32 hours with a real-world project on that website. You can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.